literally so many. And then the funny thing was,
hey, here, Brittany, would you mind just putting you on a chair there just in case we get some others coming in?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Welcome, everyone. It is good to see you all. I'm going to totally interrupt all the conversations because we're fashionably late now. So welcome, everyone. Today is one of my favorite subjects. I only talk about this all day, every day. So I'm very excited to share this with you. So if you are here in person, then yes, we've handed out we've got a handout. If you're watching online, we're going to make the handout available so you can download it from the website, or we'll attach it to the YouTube video afterwards. So we're going to go through, I'm going to go through this, this sheet today. We're going to talk about what is morning time, what is morning basket. Have any of you heard of it before? Sometimes it can be known as like circle time. Okay. Yep. Have you heard it called anything else? Morning basket. Okay. Morning collective. That's a good one. I've heard circle time. I've heard, well, some of people have said, well, we do it in the evening. So I'm like, well, you can call it evening basket. Well, I'm okay with that.
I will allow it.
Bedtime basket. I like that. That's good. Now, this idea is not original to me. So we're going to go through this. This is kind of the format that I kind of came up with when I started doing it with my kids when they were quite little. But I learned about this from a lady named Cindy Rollins. And if you want to dig into it a little more, you could look her up. She has her own website. And the book she wrote about, it's kind of biography of morning time. What does it look like through the years of your homeschool? It's called Mere Motherhood. It's one of my favorite books. It will make you cry, and I don't apologize for that. So what is morning time? The idea is that we collect all the humanities or everything that we want to teach our children that isn't a textbook, and we put it all together. And really that means everything except science and math and reading, right? So we're teaching reading, we're going to use phonics textbooks. If we're teaching math, we need a math textbook. But like, who needs a science textbook? And who needs an art textbook? And who needs, right, all the rest of it? So, and you may wonder, what does that look like practically? Well, that's what we're going to go through in our morning time basket. So I've got a number of products here that I'm going to show you that I've used and that have been really successful in our homeschool. A few notes about morning time. It works really well with littles. So if you're just starting off and you have like grades 1 to 3, 4, I would say even 5, it's ideal. Okay. It changes quite a bit when your kids get older. So if you have older kids, if you're looking more at like ages 12 plus, it'll look a little bit different. Some of the songs maybe won't look so folksy, or maybe they won't even want to do songs anymore. But when they're little, like nursery rhymes and things like that, they love that. So we'll talk this one. The first, we'll go through this first. More geared toward up to about age 12, and then I'll talk a little bit about what do we do when they become teenagers and they have online classes and social lives and friends and all that. It's different. The other thing about morning time is you can start it at any time. So it's not like, oh, but my child is 8 and we've never done it before. What do you like? You can start at any time. You can start it when your youngest is 12. You can do it with your teenagers. In fact, we'll go into this a little bit later. There is such a thing called a mom's basket as well, where you would do this for yourself to make sure that you actually read what you want to read. So this concept can be done in different ways. Welcome. Good to see you. And the biggest thing about morning time, the earlier you can start it, the sooner we begin to actually create habits for ourselves and for our children. So to create a habit of sit down, calm down, and to read and to review, to pray, to review your Bible, to read your Bible, to read through a body of literature. The sooner we start that, the better it is. It's a lifelong gift you're giving your child, is creating a habit that's going to be very beautiful. The other thing about morning time is that it is meant to be restful. Morning time should not feel like another thing. It should not feel like you're trying to tame the circus. It shouldn't feel like any of that. It should be a time when you gather your kids together, you sit down, and ideally, like, they don't actually know that this is school. So we're not going to say, "Okay, kids, time for school. Come on over here, everybody sit." That's not what's going to happen. The way I would do it was there were two really important things to our morning time. One was food, and the other was activities. So on the really good days, I would take a tea tray, got a teapot from IKEA. Actually, you can get like massive teapots from IKEA. I highly recommend it. Some fancy teacups. We even had like china cups and saucers. I had, my oldest were girls, and so they were really into this. With boys, might be a little different. But find your groove. My boys actually liked mugs that were in the shape of animals. But find something. Make a tea tray or a hot chocolate tray or something, and then add food to it. So it can be, if you're doing it in the morning time after breakfast, it can be snacks. Maybe it's fishy crackers or veggies or fruit or something like that. But we also like the Pillsbury Doughboy. You get the croissants and you put chocolate in them or cheese or jam and roll them up and then bake them. That is such a hit for morning time. So something simple, but food is really, really helpful. And it helps to get the kids together. They're gathering around for the food. They don't really know that you're going to just hit them with this beautiful collection of lessons. The other thing is activities. I have to be careful. I think it's really not helpful to take a 6 or a 7-year-old and to sit them down and say, "You need to sit there. I'm going to read to you." I think you're asking for trouble. So the best thing we can do is plan activities, and you could even rotate them. So if you have we have like a big box of magnet tiles, the kids can play for hours with that, or different kinds of Lego, right? So don't give them all the toys all in the same day, but maybe for a week you have magnet tiles, maybe you have blocks, maybe you have a huge thing is coloring books. Let them color, let them doodle. But morning time should be done with the children doing something with their hands. There's even studies that show that when their active brain is busy, and then when you're reading to them, or you have a book out loud, you're reading a book out loud, or you have a read aloud on, their brains will actually get more information in, is because like that busy brain is active, and the listening brain is now open to receive what it is that you want to tell them. So it will help you to do activities and, well, food, always food with kids. So I've done this over breakfast. I've actually done it over lunch. So it can be kind of done any time of the day. That's another principle of morning time. Do not make it attached to a time. So don't think, okay, we have to be in the living. I know this from having littles. It's not something that you say, we're going to start at 9 o'clock every morning. Kids, you better be up. You better have had your breakfast. We need you dressed, because at 9 o'clock you're in the living room. You're playing with your toys because I'm going to do this thing with you. It doesn't work like that. Routine is really important with children. Routine is extremely important. But routine has to be, first we do this thing, and when that's done, then we do the next thing, and then we do the next thing. And the day will do what the day does. The time will pass as it passes. But what we're doing as parents, as we're teaching our kids, is we're just making sure we do the next thing with our child. We'll get through it all, but it won't be attached to a time. Sometimes, that's why sometimes we ended up doing morning time over lunch, because it was just that kind of a day, right? The baby just didn't sleep well. I was tired. Someone threw up all over the place. I had a mess to clean up. Breakfast was a disaster, and I just needed to sit for a minute. So I'm just going to sit for half an hour, and morning time will be when it is, right? So those mornings happen. It's really critical that you don't turn this into this regimented thing that you have to do. So that's kind of my introduction to morning time. Those are all the caveats. Having said that, let's actually take a look at what are we going to do. So you'll notice on the top, I put a date, but then all the way on the right-hand side of the page, it says number. The reason for that is we definitely want to date it. We want to, when we're making our schedule, put the date on. And if it's the first time, we're going to say this is number 1 schedule, because we're not going to tie it to a week. So it's not like every Saturday you make sure you sit down and you rewrite your morning time for next week. It's not like that. Just like we're going to be gentle with our routines, we're going to be gentle with refreshing our morning time. So it may look like one Saturday you get you put your date down, and this is number 1, you get it all done. but you don't get to it again until 10 days later, right? So you're going to put your date on, and that's number 2. And if you keep numbering your morning time schedule, that way you'll know what you did. You keep track of this, and then you'll be able to see all the different things you did over time. And if you notice, like, hey, I did 10 days here, and I did a week here, and I did 2 weeks here, it's not like you'll know that you're not missing any because you're numbering it. So you just put them in consecutive order. That's just a little schedule-y thing that I do. Okay, and then then there's 3 blocks to morning time, as you'll see. The first thing that we do is daily routine. That is something we're going to do every single day, without fail. So we're going to write down we'll go over what we're going to do every single day, but that's going to happen every day, not negotiable. The next block that we're going to do is called the loop schedule, and it's typically read alouds. We're going to select some read alouds, but it's being done on a loop schedule. Who's heard of a loop schedule? Okay, good. So we're quite well informed on loop schedules. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, a loop schedule is when you make a list of things to do, and you don't start from the top every time and try to get through the whole thing. You just start from number 1 and you get as far as you get. So maybe on day 1 you do number 1 and number 2, and then on day 2 we're going to pick it up at number 3, right? And then maybe we get to number 4. And so we just keep, whenever we pick up our morning schedule, whenever we pick it up, when we get to our loop schedule, we just pick up where we left off. If it's the last one, if we got through 3 last time, then today we're starting on 4. And in that way, we're always going to be touching on every subject, but we're not going to be stressed out about it. We're not going to worry that, hey, we're just never getting to the last one. Maybe we should bump it up. It doesn't matter. You're going to just keep going round and around your loop schedule. And then the last block that I do is called recitation and narration. And the last block is typically when the children, I usually had them stand. My boys sometimes do this. I was way more stricter with my girls. But that's when I usually actually have them stand, and they have to recite to me their memory work. So sometimes it's vocabulary. So we like to learn Latin, and so they have to recite their vocabulary, their Latin vocabulary words in the translation. We do that with flashcards, or sometimes they just have to know it. We can sometimes do grammar and spelling rules, but the biggest one, the most important one, is times tables. We want our kids to know their times tables, but how do we do that? So they would have to say the 3 times tables. Recitation time, stand up, give me the 3 times tables, and they rattle it off. The other thing you can or can't, it depends on how much time you have, but you can have them do some narration. So you would take a read aloud that you just did, and again, I wouldn't do every child every time, but you could choose one child and say, could you tell me, what did we just read? So that's kind of the end. That's kind of where it gets a little bit hard, because the fun stuff's kind of done, and that's where it gets a little crunchy. So having said that, we also want to take a look at the different ages that we're working with. Okay, so we have 3 blocks here. It's wonderful to do with multiple ages. All your children should be able to do this at the same time. Having said that, with a daily routine, I always required all the kids do the daily routine, even the baby. You're in the room, you're doing this with us. When we were finished the daily routine, then I would let the little ones up to about 4 or 5 years old, you let them kind of wander off. It's not that it's not that you don't want them to pay attention or be there, but this is going to be a little bit longer, maybe a little bit more above their heads. And the reality is they're not going to wander too far, right? So the older ones, 6+, they're going to stay there. They're going to do their activities. They're meant to listen. Little ones can wander off. When you're finished your read aloud loop schedule, that's when you can let the kids up to 8-year-old wander off. And your recitation narration is only going to be done with your 9+, right? You're not going to get your 4-year-old to recite times tables. It's just not going to happen. You can try, but if it works, let me know. It's not going to happen. So that's where you've got the 3 blocks, and you start with all the kids. And as you go along, you kind of recognize, and too, as a parent, you kind of recognize, okay, that child, is okay if he just walks away for this next section. He's not going to pay attention. She's okay we'll catch her next year on this one. So, so the ages kind of matter. And then timing. How long should we do these things? Right? Should we be sitting doing morning time for 2 hours? Should we be forcing the kids to pay close attention? No. The daily routine, I don't think it should take more than 10 minutes. Your entire morning time should be maybe 30 minutes. As they get older, if they really have the attention span, 45 minutes. But that's long. What are you thinking?
We do 2 hours.
Okay, so she does 2 hours.
Yeah.
So
But it doesn't go every day.
Right.
And then, but like what you said, the timing, it's all that depends on what it is. But it's a restful time.
Yeah.
So the kids have their coloring books out and they are happy for me to go on. So they don't have to get to their book work.
Right. So, so there's like, so it will vary, right? Especially if you're starting off with older kids that never.
That way. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
30 minutes.
Yeah. So just give yourself shorter periods of time. And also rule of thumb is always end when the children want more. Don't push it. So it's like if you've got a read aloud that you're going through and you've come to a spot where you feel like, okay, that's a good place to stop. We're going to move on to the next one. And the kids are like, oh, come on. Can't we just, you're like, yep, we'll pick that up next time. Because guess what you're doing? You're creating anticipation, right? So that when you come back to morning time, they have that feeling of excitement. This is wonderful. This is awesome. I want to keep hearing what's going to happen. Yes.
So I've been mulling over that idea recently, and I'm wondering how that applies to neurodivergent children. Because I can do a morning time that's 10 minutes and it's not happening, or I can do a 2-hour and everyone loves it.
That's a very specific question. So
it's all of my children.
Okay.
So
So
very specific.
we'll probably go into more like neurodivergent a little bit later, more specifics on that. But I'm kind of talking a little bit more generally right now, where if we're not dealing with like super neurodivergent.
Yeah.
Okay. But we'll pull up neurodivergent in a bit.
The kid that would be closed the book, I was so not.
Yeah. Yeah. So and
and I think my kids are too. So
right.
Like, I don't think that would work.
Well, but again, there's going to be, it's going to be a little different from family to family, right? So for some kids, and as you stretch that 30 minutes out, like you may have it that the kids can actually listen for a full hour and still want more, right? But you may find that, no, I'm actually pushing it too hard. And so I'm going to stop it. But my point is like, don't, pardon me?
Gauge your family.
Yeah. Gauge your family. Don't.
The moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Read the room. Read the room.
Exactly.
And on my span, I'm spanning a lot of ages and groups. So like you're saying, like I do more for my older ones.
Yes.
And I'm like, and I actually dismiss them. Like,
yes.
No, you're excused to go.
Yes.
Like, do I have to be here? No, you're
you may go. Yeah.
And this is now the older material.
Yeah. And so that's where you may find too, maybe your daily routine at some point can go up to 15 minutes. Your read aloud is going to go on for an hour. And then your recitation is still another 20 minutes, right? So you might be able to stretch that out for the kids. You're going to have each one of these blocks is going to be different times based on your kids. Another thing on that is always teach to the oldest. When you're creating your schedule, when you're thinking about what should we learn, always teach to the oldest. Because as you're dismissing the little ones, you're teaching the oldest, they're still listening. Okay, don't kid yourself. Like you can go, you can play, but they're still listening. And so the youngest are actually going to pick up from what they can from what you're teaching to the oldest. And the youngest, so I'm among the oldest in my family, and when my next life I'm going to be the youngest, because the youngest gets to have everything over and over and over, right? So just let them have it. Teach to the oldest. Make sure you keep it rich, you keep it to the oldest's level of understanding, and keep their interests. Okay. So, but then what do we fill these blocks with? So let's go to the daily routine. So I've got some recommendations there, and I left some dots so you can put in your own things. But typically, we would start off with prayer. Now, prayer isn't just let's pray, move on. I use that as a time to actually teach prayer, right? So we would go around the room. We actually had a little prayer journal. A dollar store has these lovely books, sketchbooks, and like this faux leather thing, and it says sketch on it. It's this lovely white paper. There's nothing better to a homeschool mom than a fresh notebook. I just love these. I buy like 10 of them at a time, and then we have one for all the different subjects. So get yourself a lovely sketchbook and make it your prayer journal. We did this for all. It's fascinating, and it's so interesting to show the kids how prayer, like how God answers prayers, and how maybe He doesn't, or maybe it's different than you expected. But prayer time is something where you teach them. So every child I would ask them, "What do you want to pray about today?" And they were allowed to choose one thing about themselves, because children are selfish naturally. That's fine, but they had to choose something for someone else. I would make them. So now you have to think about someone in our community, someone outside our family, that we need to pray for. And maybe it's a global issue. Maybe it's like we want to pray for persecuted Christians. Maybe we want to pray for children who don't have enough food, or maybe we want to, so like, but the idea is you want them to get outside of their own heads when it comes to prayer. A couple of resources, because that's what I love to do, is show you resources. I loved this one here, this prayer journal, or this prayer book, Every Moment Holy. It's one of my favorites. This one, there's 3 of them in the set, but this one, it's the most practical. And I ended up buying one for each of my kids, the little pocket books. And then sometimes we would go through this. Sometimes we wouldn't. Sometimes it would be just a spontaneous prayer, but sometimes I would go through like a prayer like this with them. And again, it actually depends on time too. So like if we didn't have a lot of time, then we're doing this because we don't have time to go through everybody's sore toes and, you know. And then of course, the prayer journal, I recommend like a notebook, a fresh notebook. And again, when they have prayer requests, write down their prayer requests. We had friends, they had a vehicle that was broken down and a minivan, and it was like really, really tough for them. And so we were praying and praying. And I don't remember how the prayer got answered, but it was somewhat of a miraculous answer where we're just like, how can that be? Like, their van is fine. How did that happen? And so we would write that down, like, this is what happened to our answered prayer. And it was really neat to see that. But Every Moment Holy also comes with prayer journal. So as you're praying the prayers in there, you can actually record. They ask questions to help you to learn, what am I looking for to understand how God is answering prayer? Or how should I ask for things? Or how should I present myself? So I like these ones are really good to help with prayer. And they have all different sizes and shapes and colors and covers, and there's a lot of variety. So prayer for us was what we started with. The next thing was Bible memory work. That's not to be confused with devotions. I just assume that everybody's doing devotions. We're reading our Bibles with our kids, but I don't include that in the morning basket because that's something I think, first of all, it's very, every family has to be reading the Bible and interpreting and explaining to the children the way they believe it and the way they understand, the way they want to see it. And so I don't include that in here. What I mean by Bible memory work is actually memorizing Bible verses, or memorizing the books of the Bible, or memorizing the patriarchs, or the 12 patriarchs, right? So something biblical knowledge-wise. We used... at a certain point, I got kind of exhausted trying to decide what to memorize. We memorized Corinthians 13, and we memorized the fruits of the Spirit. We memorized Psalm 19, and we memorized, I can't remember, but we memorized vast passages of Scripture. We memorized John chapter 1, and I really like using this time to memorize passages, right? Because their memories are so alive when they're little. And so rather than just giving them a verse here and there, give them a whole entire passage. But then I got kind of tired of deciding what we were going to memorize. So I started to use these. These are memory verses. There's 53 of them, and they go through the entire Bible, starting in Genesis to Revelation. The last one is, I'm the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. The idea is, if you memorize all these verses, you've memorized you've memorized verses that kind of summarize the entire Bible. It's all the really important ones. So there's like Genesis, the creation, and then there's the fall, and then there's about the 10 Commandments. So it kind of goes through and it picks out those verses. I loved that. So we could memorize a kind of a biblical overview, but we're actually memorizing Bible verses, right? And then I did it along with this one. I used this Christian Studies program, which I absolutely love, and I think I talk about it almost every time because I just like it that much. Bible memory verse. This one, I started this one quite young at like 5 and 6. So I'd read through the Bible. This was what I used for devotions as well. But this one's really good for biblical literacy because it doesn't talk about interpretation at all. It just says, so here's the verses, right? It's got 53 verses. You'd memorize all of them all the way through the Bible, right? But it also has, here's Old Testament drills. So things that you want them to know. Where did God place man to enjoy life? What were Adam and Eve's first 2 sons? Where did God confuse the language? Who knows where the Tower of Babel was built? And so I just ask these biblical literacy questions. And that's what I'm talking about in your morning basket. Put something in there that gives them biblical literacy. The next thing we did was songs. And I used this book for a little while, 101 hymn stories. So when I say songs, you could do hymns, you could do folk songs, you could do anything, but the idea is music, right? You want to bring some kind of music into the family. And also you want to print out, if you're going to do a song or a hymn, print out the full score so that the kids can see the notes. Like where in this world do we sing with actual notes? Right? So we used to have hymn books in the church. Open your hymn book and there were the notes. They're gone now. Everything's on a overhead and you don't even need to sing if you don't want to. But singing is important. I think it's important to God that we're singing. And so print this out and then let them sing along with this. Even the little ones, they don't need to know what they're seeing. But when they get a little bit older and they're teenagers and they start playing piano and they want to sing parts, let them sing parts. Let them sing in harmony. It's the coolest thing what happens when you actually sing with the notes in front of them. The neat thing about this was, and again, teaching to the older one, we'd sing through the song with the kids. We learned so many songs, so many hymns. My little guy too, he would sing the hymn "Crown Him with Many Crowns," and there's a line. Yeah, there was the line in there. It says the potentate of time, and so my little guy he would just sing the potentate of time. It was just the most adorable thing, and so it's entertaining for the parents, and it's so helpful for the kids. But they just sing it, right? And then the kids, the older ones, you're like, let's talk about who wrote this hymn and why. The story behind the hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul," just powerful. Did you cry?
Well, it's an honesty one too. So
Yeah.
I heard it initially when I was
Yeah. And so these are beautiful stories for the kids too, to see like what happens. How do these people from the position that God puts them in, how do they bring such beauty out of that grief, right?
And again, I think it's something you had talked about before, where we learn we don't have to experience hardship ourselves, but we can gain it through stories. And I think like for that one, it was like when you like, wow, that was such a loss.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I would react in that, but that I could react the way he did.
Yeah.
And,
just if you don't know, it's written by a man who lost his 4 daughters. Was it 4 daughters? A ship went down and they drowned, and he and his wife survived, and all his children died. And he goes on a ship back to that place where they died, and he writes that song, "It Is Well With My Soul." It's just like, oh, it's amazing, right? Again, so something like this is also cross-curricular, right? So you're learning to sing, but if you're doing the stories, you're getting history, you're getting theology, you're getting virtue, you're getting character, you're getting all those things. And that's something we want to do when we curate our morning basket, is we want to find as many things that intersect other subjects as possible. So that we're not just doing one subject, but you can spend, this is why the time is important. Like you spend 2 hours, you literally take 1 or 2 things, you can spend 2 hours with it, but you just don't want to start like that, right? Let your family kind of develop that. So I think singing is really important. And then picture studies. Picture study can be really, really simple. Okay, we just used these ones. Some of the time we use these ones from Simply Charlotte Mason. This is one of my favorite artists, Fra Angelico. His art it's extremely moving, particularly here. Jesus is he's risen from the dead, and here's where he says, "Don't touch me," to Mary. And it's just the whole graphic. You can there's something like you read it in the Bible, and okay, fine, that happened. But to sit and meditate on that with children see things in art from their simplistic innocence that we just don't see. So just to put it in front of them and say, what do you see? What's going on? What's happening? It's beautiful. And it doesn't need to take very long. You can also focus on like Bibles. So here's pictures from the book of Genesis by various artists. So you could tie that into your Bible memory work, but do something with art. I've also just used, Memoria Press has these postcards or posters, and I've used those as well and just put them up and just talked a little bit about them. Fun fact, my daughters, I came home from work a little bit ago. The girls were kind of left, they were gone. What is going on? So much noise. What is going on? I went into their rooms, and their rooms were plastered with posters, as like every teenage girl does, right? They weren't just any posters. They were the posters from the Memoria Press classical art program. And they had so one of my daughters has the Pietà, and then she has some Raphael and Cassatt and some Holbein. And then they wrote little note cards beside the art with the name and the artist. And like, I was just so humbled. I went in the rooms, and it was this beautiful art gallery. And so that is something beautiful that can happen, right? So suddenly their appreciation of art is classical art, and they have beautiful bedrooms now. I didn't have anything to do with that.
So now in that you have their daily routine. So like for the classic Charlotte Mason, do you like put it out and leave it for a week.
Mhm.
So do you give a new piece of art every morning?
No, you do the same piece.
Or okay.
And
You
it's just
look back on the same piece.
Yeah.
And just have a moment.
you just have a moment.
Okay.
Like, here's our piece of art. Anybody remember who's the artist? Remember what we talked about yesterday? Let's just take a moment. Or do anybody have any new insights? And if not, that's okay. Let's just take a deep breath and take a moment. And it can be a little moment of quiet time, or just nothing. It's really not spectacular at all. But the things that happen from just exposing your child and allowing the beauty to just kind of be something that they observe. Like, from my experience, I had no clue the depths that it would reach in my children. So, and then finally, poetry.
Very quick question.
Yes.
That blue, the Bible art, is that a whole series?
Yes, yeah. So they have, this one's Genesis. They have, it doesn't go through all the books of the Bible, but they have one on parables, and they have one on Luke, book of Luke. And
And is there overlap then?
I'm not sure. Probably.
So Mark, you want to talk?
Yeah, these Bible ones are definitely topical. Okay, poetry. Poetry was so much fun. I didn't grow up with poetry. I didn't like poetry. I thought it was kind of boring. Who needs poetry? Boy, was I, things changed for me. So again, when you're starting with littles and poetry, start with fun and just silly. And they, we started with this one here, Child's Book of Poetry. We memorized so many poems in here, and we learned to say them together. And you have like the silly poems, and you say the silly poems together, and like the laughs and the, I don't know, the conversations. I have my favorite poem in here, and the kids think I'm totally silly, but it's my favorite poem, and I don't apologize for it, and I read it to them anyway. And so we all have our favorite poems, and the thing about saying the same poem every day, again, is that children have a vast capacity to memorize. And so with all of these daily routines, we're just going to do them once a day. Like, you're going to read through your Bible memory verse. You're not going to be saying, I'll say the memory verse, you say it after me. Okay, let's do it 3 more times. Repeat after. You just say it through. They say it through. Move on. You do that every day for 7 days, 10 days. They've got it. You just don't have to make it a big deal. Same thing with poetry. Read a poem. Read a poem to them. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious, sometimes about nature, and they'll memorize the poetry. And as you start moving into higher level poetry, they're interested. They want to know. So at a certain point, we moved into this one, Poetry for the Grammar Stage, and I had this with me because I didn't know what I was talking about. They didn't know I didn't know, but I didn't tell them. I just had this. So you read through a poem. We would read through one. This one here was very impactful. And my son still talks about it today. I know I can't do this much time on every subject. I just have to do it with this one, though. No, I can't find it. Izzy, do you remember the one about the animal? Yeah, and his creator is your judge. It says it in very poetic language. We both just ruined it. But anyway, we totally ruined it. But anyway, the idea is, like, the animals can't speak, so you can treat them however you want because they can't do anything about it. But just remember one thing: his creator is your judge. And my son, after he read that too, he was very impacted by that. And so poetry will have underlying text, moral implications without preaching, right? I think I started this one at like 7 or 8. And then what this teacher's manual. So I talked through this. I did not use this as a workbook. I used this as a way for me to have a discussion with the kids. It goes through vocabulary. So day 1, I would say, let's talk about these words. We read the poem, talk about the words, done. The next day, read the poem, and then I would say, did you know that poems have a rhyming pattern? This poem's rhyming pattern is that. Oh, cool, done, move on. And then the next day we talk about the lines and how so I just use each one of these blocks every day to talk about the poem. That was it. I learned so much. I think poetry is really important. This is also a really good resource for poetry. This is a collection of what this particular author, and she's very knowledgeable in this area. She believes that every child should learn every poem in this book. So it's from K to 12. You could literally just take this, start this with your children when they're little and just do the next poem. And that's all you need. Just memorize these poems. These are some of the most impactful poems that have ever been written. Okay. So that's our daily routine. That's what we're going to do every single day. And now it took me way too long to go through that because I love it all. You wouldn't take as long as what I just took now. Maybe later on you would, but not initially. And then I left a couple of points there because something else you might want to include in your daily routine is something that's important to your family. Like is there something that's traditional to your family, that's part of your family that you'd want to put in there, and that's what you can do right there. Okay, moving on. Yes. Yep. Yep.
But usually when I volunteer for that, I find that works really good when the kids want to do it.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, I want to do this. Oh, I can play that. And
Yeah.
then they'll play it while you sing it.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of comes organically just from their level.
Yeah, exactly. And also what's happening when you do this, what happens is your whole home, this becomes an aroma in your home. It creates an entire culture in your home. Like this is what we do. We say poetry. We memorize passages of the Bible. We sing songs. And so the kids will tie into that. Like my daughter's putting classical art posters on their bedroom walls. They tie into what you're doing with them all the time. Like that for them is normal, right? And so your home becomes this, for the kids, they just take all this stuff and they just make it bigger, which is what they do with anything that's put in front of them. But why not this, right? Yes, yeah, exactly. So like they do the most beautiful. Your children will end up doing the most beautiful thing, and it's just like you can't predict what will come out of it. You just can't. So then we move into the read aloud loop schedule. I have so many things I want to share. I don't know if we'll get through it all. So with the read aloud loop schedule, I gave some recommendations there because we want to, with this, like this is literally everything your child needs to learn other than the textbooks for math and the textbooks for learning to read. Okay. You can cover everything in this read aloud loop schedule. So we have the obvious ones are historical fiction and literature, but who's going to be covering fairy tales and myths in their homeschool if you don't have something like this? Or where are you going to be picking up biographies of artists and musicians? And how about like read alouds on math or science? Sure, you could have a dry science textbook, but what if you had a read aloud, a story that you could read and it would intersect with all the different areas of the world, of history, of culture, of music? What if we could do that instead? It's so much more enriching. So I'm going to show you some of the things that we have. So for historical fiction, well, historical fiction is kind of just an obvious. These ones are really good. What's the cross-curricular in here? It's got First Nations. It's got a Canadian component to it. You've got explorers. Like there is so much in this that's more than just historical fiction, right? I personally like the Canadian component. People often want more Canadian. It is a series. Yeah, this is a series. The thing about series is you want to be careful that you don't like pick one and then just read through all of them. If there's a series and it's good, pick one and then move on. If you come back to the series again later on because you really like it, great. But the other thing is if you have kids who can read on their own, pick one, read it through read aloud your morning time, and then let them read the rest of the series in their own time, right? If you have voracious readers like I do, when we finish a book like this and they're like, let's do the next one, I'm like, that's great, here you go, you can read this, right? It gets a little bit tedious if you just read through a series. So for historical fiction, there are so many things. Some people get really clever and they do like for 1 year they do just ancient history, and then the next year they'll do medieval history, and the next year they'll do like modern world history. I'm not that clever, but you could be that clever. It's definitely something you could do. Literature, again, literature is like a classic. This was one of our favorite read alouds. I don't know why. I can't tell you what it was, but this was the one where I had finished reading it, and they would want me to continue to read it, and I would just be like, oh, pick it up next time. And literature is something too, like where it kind of falls by the wayside in homeschooling because like, oh, we'll read those books at some point, right? Like, oh, I'm sure we'll read that later. And yet we just never do. So if you don't intentionally put it in your homeschool schedule, it's not going to happen. So literature, put it in there, make it a part of your basket. And again, if you wanted to, you could do an ancient historical fiction and the literature from the ancients, something like that. Be all clever. Okay, fairy tales and myths. Fairy tales is quite fascinating, especially with little kids. Cindy Rollins, again, the lady who I learned this from, she talks a lot about fairy tales, and she talks about reading them, the more gruesome fairy tales along with the more pleasant fairy tales. And so I was like, okay, let's do that. So I read Big Klaus, Little Klaus to my kids. She's still okay. It's quite a story. And when I read through it, of course, it's like about this guy and he chops off heads and he puts them in the bag and he thinks it's hilarious and he runs off and, it's really funny. The moral of the story is don't do that. That's really bad.
I was confused actually.
Yeah.
What that moral might
Yeah.
have been.
Yeah. But like for me, I'm thinking this is really gruesome. I don't know about this. And the kids think it's hilarious because they don't have a visual of like bloody chopped off heads. For them, it's like cartoon funny, right? And they still get the moral of this. Really important. They get the moral of the story. So we have to be really careful as adults. We don't impose our cynical, sometimes overly exposed ideas of the world onto the literature and say, oh, my child can't read this. They don't see it the way you're going to see it. And so I kind of agree that we should be reading fairy tales and we should be reading the scary ones alongside the really fun ones. Also, we should be reading all the Disney movie fairy tales. We should be actually reading the original fairy tales to our children so that they can learn what the fairy tale actually says. It's a true story.
Andrew
Pudewa, yeah.
actually has a really good hour-long speak of actually how to go through the fairy tales.
Okay.
And what each one actually teaches and why you would go with this one first. Because then they gradually get to the end where it's like actually good and evil.
Yes.
Like get consequences and like, yeah. So he goes through it really, really well. So if you ever want to look it up, it's actually a really good speech.
Okay, is that on his IEW page?
No, YouTube page.
Okay, so YouTube, look for Andrew Pudewa on fairy tales. Yeah. Anything Andrew Pudewa says is worth listening to. Yeah, so if he says something about fairy tales, yeah, I would say go for it. I
never thought of it that way.
Okay. I like Andrew Lang. Andrew Lang collected all the fairy. He didn't write them, but he collected them. Pardon me? Yes, he's the one with the colors. So he collected them way back. I can't remember when. It was like early 19th century, something like that, but from all around the world. Turns out there are so many fairy tales, and he had so many of them, he published them into books. But in order to tell the difference between the different volumes he published, he just named them colors. So this is the blue fairy book. It has absolutely nothing to do with the color blue. It isn't blue, nothing blue about it. It's just, that's his collection of fairy tales. There's the green fairy book, the orange fairy book, the red fairy book, it's all the colors, the pink fairy book. So again, I wouldn't suggest read all of Andrew Lang because you'd be doing that forever. But pick an Andrew Lang. I think it's important to read some of Andrew Lang. Just like you could pick a Brothers Grimm anthology. But again, be careful of reading the abridged or edited fairy tales because they tend to be really whitewashed and like cleaned up. And that misses the whole point. Like evil is real. Fairy tales help our children to understand a side of evil that's real and that's serious without us turning it into like, oh, you're too little for that, right? Yes. Okay. I don't know.
Anyway, he wrote a book and all of his fairy tales are based off the Grimm.
Okay.
It's just like readable for the kids.
Okay.
And it's graphic. Like
yeah. The Little Mermaid? She turns into sea foam.
Yeah, that's right. And so like it's the
that's
real Grimm part, but it's readable for the kids.
Okay.
And it's just the pictures are so fun.
Okay.
Beautiful looking book.
Right.
I wish I could remember.
Oh. Well, if you do remember, let us know. But yeah, so the idea is find an anthology of fairy tales and read it to your children and make sure it's not cleaned up too much. Okay, and also mythology. Mythology I'd be a little bit careful with. I like to do mythology a little bit later at like 7 or 8 years old, I would say, and they should have a really good understanding of Bible stories because mythology is about the gods, but not about the God, right? So they should understand this is the Bible, these are the stories, but the other nations had their idea about gods too, and this is their idea.
So how do you work that when it's like to the oldest child, but you put a whole bunch under 7? How would you?
it gets tricky, and that's where you're going to dismiss the younger ones and read to the older one, and maybe they listen, maybe they don't. But again, you're not going to be like saying to the littles, hey, let's read about Greek mythology, right? They can get dismissed, right? This is one of my favorite books on Greek mythology. I think it's a great introduction. And they also have one on Norse mythology. So to start off, I would say this. Again, like there's all different ways to present Greek mythology to children. Some of them are better than others. There's a podcast called Greeking Out. I don't know. Sometimes I like it. Sometimes I think it's a little bit too casual about the whole thing. So I'd say like use your discretion, but find something that's mythology. And then of course Shakespeare. We must have Shakespeare in our morning basket, even if you just do it 1 year, just a little bit. This one is Shakespeare, the complete Shakespeare, but all the stories are all his plays are turned into prose, so they're actually easy to read. They're just stories. When we're dealing with younger kids, we want to give them a story or an overview of some of these classic works, because if you just throw a child or you throw a teenager into Shakespeare, say, here, read Taming of the Shrew, they're like, what am I doing here? What is the story? It's really hard to understand. But if you give them something like this, so they have an understanding of what the story is about, then when they get the original plays later on, it's much more interesting. Ainsley over here, how old were you when we first got this one? Somewhere around 10. And she devoured it. My copy no longer has a cover. But she knows the Shakespeare plays now. She loved it so well that now don't quote Shakespeare to her unless you're 100% sure, because she will correct you. She just will. So even like just something like that on Shakespeare, if that's all you do, that's fine. Later on, if they have interest, they'll pick it up, right? Okay, math and science. Like, who's ever thought about reading aloud a book about math? See? I love you for that. Or like science, like, right? Have you ever thought, like, there you go. We're going to read a story about science. No, what about a story? Okay. For the younger ones, there is nothing better than Thornton Burgess. So Thornton Burgess wrote these stories about animals. And there's, I would say these are really good for like ages 4 to 8, even maybe a little bit older for those kids who just really like a good story. I like listening to the audios of these. But he goes through like the whole animal kingdom. This is Jimmy Skunk. I think there's 24, 25. And the different animals, so the animals retain their animal characteristics in the story. So Jimmy the skunk is a sneaky little guy. And he's constantly looking out for Reddy Fox, because Reddy Fox is a bit sneaky and wants to eat him. And you go to the pond and there's old grandfather Toad. And so as you read through the story, you actually learn about the entire animal kingdom through this, but it's just good stories. So there's, for littles, that's an excellent science read aloud. He also wrote like Book of Birds and the Book of Flowers and the Book of the Seashore book. And they're just stories. And then something like this. So this one I think is a win, because this is called The Talking Wire. This one also is a biography. So now we're getting biography, history, and science. This is the story of Alexander Graham Bell and how he discovered the telephone. So reading through this, so interesting, so fascinating. We read through a biography on Florence Nightingale. I actually don't have it in here. But who knew that she was actually the first? She discovered what we now have as the science of statistics. Mm-hmm. Right? You read that book, right? Mm-hmm. So we think Florence Nightingale was this wonderful nurse, which she was. But one of the successes of what she did in the Crimea was that she started to plot diseases and casualties and things on a chart. And she started to come up with statistics. And how she came... Yes. So she was like, okay, based on these statistics, these medical scenarios are going to need attention really quickly, and they would start triaging. And so we now have statistics because of Florence Nightingale. She was a brilliant mathematician. I know, it's the things you learn. So you can. There's a lot of science and math read alouds that actually overlap. So, for example, this one here, Hidden Figures. I'm sure we've seen the movie. You've all heard the movie, right? Hidden Figures. Absolutely love the movie. 4 women who one of them was a particularly brilliant mathematician, and they're responsible for the first spaceship getting up into space. Like, there's so much about this story that's absolutely brilliant. And something like this, it's just, when you're reading through it, if you think about it, if you're just sitting reading the story and you're getting history and math and courage, the courage of these women that they had to go through, right? You just have to read a book. Just don't need to do a textbook. Number Stories of Long Ago. This is another math book on how we came to have the numbers we have, because there's different kinds of numbers. There's Arabian numbers, Roman numerals. The number 0 didn't exist for the longest time, right? It came much later. I think it came even after the birth of Christ. So it's a relatively new concept, the number 0. And then Great Inventors and Their Inventions. So this one's more, it's a biography. It's a science read aloud. It's history. So much to that. So you just, especially with younger kids, reading these stories will have such an impact on their learning. And then one of my personal favorites, anything by John Hudson Tyner. So this is The World of Biology. We read through this one. This one's a series I would say you should read. He also has one on the history of medicine. Absolutely fascinating. He tells the story of biology, and he starts his method is a little bit, he starts kind of in the beginning, and he talks about the people who made the discoveries and what they discovered and why it was important, and how that created other discoveries and how that created healing, especially the one about medicine was really important. This book will also tell you why the Canary Islands are called the Canary Islands, and they're actually named after dogs.
Does that read like it looks like text?
It reads like a story. Okay. Believe it or not, it reads like a story. Yeah.
His other one was really fascinating. He did do a very good job of keeping it story-like.
Yeah, he does. He keeps it story-like. So this is really easy to read to younger kids. If you have to do biology for an ages 6, 7, 8, this is it's just, and even if you don't have to do it, this one really works. And the medicine one was fantastic. We read History of Medicine about how they didn't understand that by not cleaning their hands, they were spreading bacteria, right? And so they came to understand that, and then they learned how to, if they had wounds, they would literally cauterize them with hot metal and things, right? The things they did was absolutely gruesome. And then my son he cut his hand at one point, and I had to bring him to the hospital. And he's looking at it, he's all interested in it, and the doctor's looking at it, and they're both poking in it together. He's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, so it looks like it just got, my son's like, yeah, kind of way at it, about this wound with him. And I think he was 7 at the time. So the doctor's like, well, we'll just stitch that shut. And my son's like, okay, no problem. The doctor grabs the needle, and Elijah's like, whoa. He's like, what? Have you sterilized that needle? And it was just a beautiful experience. And the doctor treated him very respectfully, like an adult. Like, yeah, of course. Yeah, I did sterilize. This is how we sterilize. It was beautiful. And then at a certain point, he kind of turns around where Elijah can't see him. He looks at me. He's like, homeschooled. I'm like, so again, if we're opening our children's eyes to math and science and history and art in this way, imagine what happens when they actually become, I've seen this too, when they turn 12 and 13, and now they're ready for a little bit more than a story. Now they're like, okay, but how does biology work? Now they're ready for the textbook, the really heavy duty, thick textbook. Now they're ready for it because you've read all these stories about all these people and what they did and why it was important. And so now you can give them the textbooks. Few more things. Geography. Anybody know this one? Okay, this one, Paddle to the Sea, it's about a little, it's a carved boat, a man in a boat, carved by a boy. He lets him out on the water in Lake, one of the Great Lakes. I think so, Lake Superior. And then the little boat goes all the way through the Great Lakes, and it ends up in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, so here, and it'll show you, so here's Lake Superior's outline, which is actually like a wolf, right? And so he'll go through that. What's the cross-curricular? What's the win in this title, in this book? Canadian geography. It's beautiful. And there's so many things. You grab a map, and maybe you know people who live in some of these places. We did this one, and we just read a page a day, just a page a day. And the kids were absolutely riveted. So, and that author has done a lot of books of geography like that. So there's your geography. These ones about musicians. Have you seen these ones? Opal Wheeler wrote an entire series on the musicians. It tells their life story. And as you go along, some of them, probably not this one because I chose to, oh, there it is. They have the actual notes in the book. And so you can, if your student plays piano, you can read the story. And again, just we're done with the story, put it down. Almost guarantee you they're going to kind of sneak it away and try to play that on the piano, right? And we're just not going to look, because if we don't look, then they'll play it even more. So these ones are really, really neat to read and to understand music. And then these are some of my favorites about artists. Again, it tells the story of the artist's life, and it has the art as they created it. And so you can see how the art developed, how it changed as their life progressed, and some artists had some really tough lives, and their art completely reflects that. So this is one or two of these is really helpful.
This is all loop still, right?
This is loop. Now, again, what I've shown here is I've put 4 lines. I've only ever done 4 read alouds at a time. Okay.
One time
Yes.
but it's one per sit down.
But it's on the loop. Yeah. Well, not necessarily one per sit down. So one day we might get through 3 of them. Okay. And then we'll stop, and then we'll start with the 4th one the next day. But we do have 4 books. We're reading 4 books on the go constantly.
I'm just trying to process the 4 at one time.
Yes.
So they're topical, so it's easy for the kids to switch gears. It's not like you're, because when we do our read alouds, it's like through the full chapter that was 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But you're doing like 1 page.
I might do a chapter.
And it depends. Like some
Yeah.
books go really fast. And
Yeah.
the chapters fly by, and that's like 2 chapters.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, 15 minutes on one chapter is a long time for
Yeah.
one thing.
Yeah, it
Like
can
when she
be.
said like 1 page in this one, that book's done.
Yeah.
Because
It's
yeah,
like-
you want to keep
that
them
makes
like this, so
Yeah.
that you're shutting the book before they're done with it.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of learning by read aloud.
Yes, it is. It's learning by read alouds and conversation. Like the conversation that comes out of that. That's another thing, is like some days you're going to be able to read quite a bit because people aren't very talkative. But other days you're not going to get past 2 paragraphs because everyone's going to have to tell you how that reflects on their.
You want to encourage the conversation. Watch it.
That's right.
You don't want to check the box.
Exactly. And you want the read alouds to be somewhat. You want them to have content that's interesting and educational. Like pro tip: don't read Swiss Family Robinson out loud.
Yeah, I heard it reads like a science textbook.
It's just, and it's like long and it's dragging out, and there's like
It's so disappointing.
the story isn't like,
That's a group. That's
yeah, it just don't do that one.
The one time that the movie's better than the book.
It's not that the book is not okay. It's just it's not a morning time basket. It's not. I can't concede. I can't. I can't. So yeah. So we're doing like 4 simultaneously, and like so. The thing is too, if you're doing like a historical fiction, we were doing Hannibal. He went with Hannibal, and then we're doing Greek mythology, and then we're doing Paddle to the Sea, and then we were doing. There's one more I can't remember, but they're so different, right? So the kids have no problems keeping track of what's what.
Not like bored after.
No. No.
They actually get their preference of which one you want to read next. So you put that one last.
Yeah.
So they carry through the other ones. So because they're like, oh wait, we'll read this one. Okay, we're just gonna read this one and this one. Then we'll read that one.
Yeah. And then it kind of narrows down.
It helps you figure that out, but you be careful that you don't base your read alouds on what the kids are interested in. As a matter of fact, I always encourage the moms to put 1 or 2 books in there every year that you want to read, regardless of what the kids want. Because if you want to read it, it's fun.
For you.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah.
Because like,
But it's also gonna be fun for them. Like
Well,
if you're so interested, then they are so fascinated by your fascination.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
So as a teacher, if you're excited, or as a mother, or as the reader, if you're excited, it spills out of you. It can't help it, right?
Mhm.
And so they're going to be like, "What's the big deal? Why are we so excited?" I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So you have to put something in there that you like.
Oh, why are you crying, Mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
Medicine one,
crying.
I literally gasped. I was like,
Yeah.
And they're like, what's happening? And
Yeah.
I was like, hold on. I need to read a little further.
You guys can come back to this later. I got to read faster. It happens. True story. It happens. Okay.
Music, theory,
This one here.
And the artist, are those like a downstairs find or an upstairs?
They're upstairs. I think all of this is upstairs.
Okay.
Yes. And that's the thing about like either our website or the book stacks here is we've got like everything is sorted by subject. And so if you want to have a science read aloud, just go to the 8 to 12 science section and like there is so much. Okay. Oh, and then also just for fun, put something, just throw something like this in your morning basket once in a while, just because it's so fun. This Tuttle Twins Guide to Modern Villains. And like you can do like logic read alouds. You can do like anything. Just keep it interesting, keep it short, keep it relevant.
Yeah, like the logic read aloud. We did that because we need to grow in that on my children.
Yeah.
So it was great because that's much more of a talking one. That's more of like a discussion with element of growth. But it was really great. Like one who needed help. Oh, this is why that happens. Yes.
Yeah.
Cause and effect. Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Really
logic
fun
read.
story-based way.
Yes. Okay, just a few more things. So the recitation and narration, that one's relatively self-explanatory. Times tables is a big one for that. But things to add in, manners of the week. Things we don't think about. This was one I absolutely loved, the English grammar recitation. This is like a dictionary, a question and answer dictionary or catechism of the English grammar. If you memorize this, you know everything there is to know about the English grammar. Yes.
Okay. Why do we need to know?
That is a different conversation, which I would love to have, but I'm not going to go there because then you'll have me here for another hour.
Okay, come back here next month.
Maybe we have to talk about English, why we should be learning English grammar and Latin. Don't let me go there right now. So if you are so inclined to want your kids to know grammar, then if you don't want your kids to know grammar, just it's okay. You don't have to. Yeah. So, but like things like what are the 8 parts of speech to keep it simple, right? What are the tenses? What is a participle? Do we know the answers to these? Now, at the younger ages, you can have them memorize this. There's also workbooks to go with this. And then as they get older, you start having them do workbooks to start actually working with it. So like a workbook that says, like, give me a noun, and you got to write all the nouns in. So they should start working with grammar at some point to start seeing how the sentences fit together. But this is a great way to have them memorize because like there's only one way to know what a noun is, and what that is, memorize it. There's no other way. Mad Libs are fantastic, right? So you can do that too. And then this is also for, yes.
I was gonna say, for younger kids, I have books that you sell here that are more picture-based
Yes.
for different grammar stuff.
Yes. And that's something you could do like for younger kids, like really younger kids. Instead of doing read aloud chapter books, all chapter books, you could choose picture books. So for grammar, like we've got that series, what is if you were a verb, if you were an adverb, right? So you could choose one of those books and read through that for a week, and that's one of your read alouds, right? Yeah.
Would you do that?
Yeah. So any of the Beautiful Feet curriculum guides, you could fit that in here. I'm actually doing that at the high school level with my girls right now, because we're gonna go there just in a minute, because when they're in, like once the older kids get into classes and things, then sitting down and doing this with older kids every day, it's hard. It's really hard. Partly it's a timing thing. Try to get everybody in this room at the same time, virtually impossible. And the more children you have, the more impossible it becomes. So at a certain point, you have to kind of let the older ones kind of just be done. But then as much as possible, I do try to get them to come for the read aloud loop part, or I just have a different loop schedule for them that we do on a totally different time.
Okay, and when you're saying, like, I know you're saying Bible memory and stuff, like emotional, work that into morning time at a young age, or is that
Nope.
separate?
Devotionals, like reading the Bible stories, and
Like my kids aren't reading.
no, but yeah. So I usually would typically do that at breakfast or before bed.
And you don't attach it.
I don't attach any Bible study or devotion to morning time. I think that's a different category all on its own. Like I think it's really important for family devotions, family Bible reading. That's something that should overarch your entire homeschool. This is kind of under that. That should happen regardless. If you can't do this, at least do Bible devotions and read the
Yeah.
Bible and talk about the Bible with your kids. That's right. It's very,
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen morning time as
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
well,
I just don't see us logically sitting down.
right. And again, because every family is different,
Yeah.
this is where you might say, listen, I'm putting Bible devotions in here. That's what works for us. That's the whole point of morning time, is that you turn it into something that works for you, right? That's why, like, this here for me was very simple. I could start with this and go with that. Sometimes I did 2 or 3 things on those lines, but I never did more than 4 ever. And it was so simple. I could keep it up. Now, if you go online, you can actually, if you search for Morning Basket or Morning Time, you can actually buy Morning Time plans and Morning Time stories, and you can spend a lot of money on other people's morning time schedules for you. And that may or may not work. The point is, there are so many different ways to do this. Once you get the general concept, you turn it into whatever works for your family. Like, maybe you don't do recitation narration at all. Maybe that's just not something you're going to do. Maybe we just don't do grammar anymore. I'm just not going to let that go. So the point is, like, this is kind of a sketch of what we did and how it really worked for us, but you would take it and adapt it to how it would work for you. This is one final thing I want to bring up about the recitation is this is like a phonics dictionary. And I find, especially when you're teaching reading, or even if your kid's a little bit older and they're struggling with reading, it's just lovely to have all the phonics rules in one place. And for recitation time too, you can have them go through their whatever words they're struggling with. Okay, come, we're going to read through this. So recitation is just a time to take out that you're going to, anything they're struggling with, anything that you can just do repetition over and over and over, that goes in that.
So it's
That's
not
like
you're always standing them up. But you're also working on it.
Oh yeah, they have textbooks as well. But there's something about, especially for young kids, having them stand up and recite, there's something
Sure.
about that has it stick.
But when are they practicing it? Like, are they also practicing it during that time, or they were supposed to go prepare and now they're showing?
So no, so this is, so after, so as my kids got older, then we would do morning time, and then they would have workbooks to do as well. So they always have reading and math to do outside of morning time. And then I started to integrate like grammar workbooks, and then we had Latin workbooks as well. So we did Latin memory work in morning time, but we did our Latin workbooks. That was a different thing. That was a different time. So usually we would start with morning time, then have lunch or something, and then the older ones, those who had more workbooks, would start launching into their workbooks. But the littles, they can completely go away. But going through this body of literature with the tiny little ones, they're getting so much. And by the time they hit that workbook age, it's going to be so easy because they're just going to know it, right? The oldest is always the hardest, not because they're difficult, but because you're new at it.
Yeah.
You've never done this. No, you don't have the culture. You don't have the, I don't know.
You're parenting them and figuring it all out at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the worst.
yeah. I think it's true. Just generally, the oldest. I'm sorry to the oldest,
Yes.
and I include my second oldest as well, who's here, because it's hard.
I tell that to her all the time. I say, it's not you.
No.
It's just the situation.
Yeah, I've never actually parented before.
Yeah, I've never parented
Never.
at this stage. I'm just letting you know, it's really tricky.
It's like, yeah, exactly. Okay, I just have to show you these because there's the morning time schedule, but then there's the books you need to have. You must have these because I say. We've had it here before. The Adams History Chart of the World.
Yes.
It pulls out.
Yeah.
Yes, I have that one.
You have it now, so you're good. You're
I'm good.
Good. Okay.
And I bring it out to so many people, and they're like, "Wow,
But
this is amazing!" And I feel really proud of myself.
but how many times have you been reading something? Like reading something. I'm like, wait, what else was happening? I pull it out. I'm like, all this was happening at the same
I'm sorry,
time.
I have coveted it, so it's actually still in its thing, and it goes in its proper place, and no one touches it until I bring it out. So I don't do that yet.
It's like
Yes, Ainsley, would you grab it? It's
It
downstairs.
literally spans. The
We will grab one.
it is really good.
It is so neat.
You will understand. Yeah. Julia Rothman books, fantastic. So they fill a gap, like especially the nature anatomy. If you do nature walks. So again, we're gonna be doing this for book work, but we're also gonna be going outside a lot, right? So we're gonna be doing hikes and we're gonna be going to the lakes, and this is all part of our homeschool. So you're gonna want Nature's Anatomy, Julia Rothman. I like a few encyclopedias. These DK encyclopedias are really good. Usborne encyclopedias are really good. So grab a few of those and make sure you have those. This one, Book of Composers.
Oh, brilliant. Cannot say enough, to be honest.
You just need to have this one. It goes through the book. It goes through composers chronologically, starts with ancients. But here's the very best part of this book. I'm so excited about this. QR codes.
Oh, yeah.
The classical period, QR code, takes you to Spotify. You can listen to the music while you go on to read. It is just this. It is. You just got to have this book. Because I only have a few, so you hold on to it. And then this one, same company, the Beautiful Feet books. Everything they put out is just beautiful. Book of Nations. So this has every country of the world in it, and it has just a page. It summarizes their official name, the capital, population, the area, just those fingertip facts you want to know about every single country of the world.
So that we can watch the opening ceremony.
That's right. Yeah. I'm sorry, but the book was still good.
I was like so excited to be like, guys, look.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is one of those, I would say, just, you got to have it. Yes. Yeah. Oh, with like a map.
Maybe we could do that in.
Oh, that's brilliant. So that would be, yeah. So that would be like a geography part, right? So you have this in there. You read about it, and then you go color it on the map.
If you want to do something really cool, they
I wanna
actually
do
have
that.
scratch map, where you actually will
Yeah,
scratch
scratch
away and the country's revealed underneath.
Yeah.
If you want to do something cool like that. Yes, and you can get them at Indigo and online all over.
Okay.
And they look really pretty.
Okay. This is the Adams chart.
Yeah, that's exactly how mine looks.
At some point, you are going to have to take the cover off. Would you help me? Oh my god. Oops.
No, I couldn't. It was literally my children. I couldn't. Yeah. So
Oh, there we go. We're doing this backwards. Here. There it is. See? Okay. We're gonna need your help with this one. Okay. So, okay. But here's the most amazing thing about this one. See where it starts? Cain and Abel. It starts with creation, Cain and Abel. So it's biblical. So there's the top part continues to go all the way. It tells the story of the Bible all the way to the center of history, which is the crucifixion. And you'll see there's just a black mark that goes all the way through. And then the bottom below this line here is world history. So you can see how empires kind of rise and fall. Rome is an absolutely huge empire right at the death of Jesus. And then look how the world just splits into tiny, tiny bits. I've pored over this thing since I was 14. And it's just like, I love it.
Do you still have your own?
I have my original.
The nostalgia.
That one doesn't even come out of my closet.
you got your own copy.
I have my own old copy.
Yeah, I love it.
So this is one that, yeah. Okay. So, okay, so that kind of concludes what I had to say. I just want to circle back though to Brittany's question about neurodivergencies. So one of this was a practice that we did in our home. It was highly successful, but we had to adapt to the children as they grew, as I learned about their learning challenges and abilities and all these different things. So I think that while I'm saying do this, I'm hoping what you're hearing is how's this going to work for my family? How is this going to work for my kids? And one of the reasons why I think this is a system that can be successful in absolutely every home is because you can tweak it any way you like or any way you need to. So if we take the general principle, here's your body of educational materials. As the parents, you're going to intentionally select, we're going to go over these subjects and these topics. Now, how you're going to implement it, that's going to look different from home to home because you're going to have different needs, different children, right? So I think exactly this works exactly because sometimes we have very neurodivergent children. Okay. Any other questions? And if not, then let's call it a night. Thank you so much for coming.
Water and getting still in the other room.
Yes. Thank you, Sarah.